If you understand pipelines and the Israeli-centric grip on U.S. foreign policy, it makes perfect sense. At minimal, a gas line to Pakistan from Iran is going to happen. So look for more excuses for the U.S. to bomb in Pakistan. Everyone admits now that they know Iran is not building a bomb. The worry is that if Iran can build nuclear power for electricity, they could free up all the oil they currently consume and sell it. PNAC wants to destroy any potential economic or military rivals, and to hell with the people living in any country.
This is one of the most important videos I'm going to make. It's about plans to balkanize Syria. I've talked and written about this numerous times over the years, but now it has become obvious to everyone. Last month, Kerry came out and affirmed everyone's suspicions. He called for Syria to be partitioned and said it was part of Plan B if negotiations fail. But in reality, this was always Plan A. Plans to balkanize Syria and Iraq were laid out by former US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice in 2006 in Tel Aviv. It was called the Project for a New Middle East. This was a carbon copy of the Oded Union Plan drawn up by Israel in 1982. The plan is to create a bunch of weak mini-states that will be in perpetual war with each other and never united enough to throw back their colonial chains. The powers who started the wars in both Syria and Iraq did it to redraw borders on a map. The blood of millions of innocent people, your sons, our sons, and children, was spilt over this objective. The very fabric of entire nations ripped apart because of these people's plans. Well-meaning people might say, but federalism doesn't sound so bad. The point that these people are missing is that the borders of the federal states would be drawn along sectarian lines, not on whether a state can sustain its population. This means that a small amount of people will get all the resources and the rest will be left to starve. The areas they are trying to carve out, the coastal area of Latakia and the region of Al-Hasakeh in Syria, are where all the resources, water and agriculture and oil is. They want to leave the majority of Syrian population in a landlocked, starving rump state and create a situation where there is going to be an inevitable perpetual war between divided Syrians. Ironically, they try to paint federalism as a road to peace, because Iraq has been so peaceful since they introduced federalism in 2005, right? You see, people say that Iraq was a mistake, but I say Iraq is exactly how the neocons intended it to be. They achieved the following in Iraq and Syria: introducing Al-Qaeda, removing chemical weapons, destroying oil infrastructure, and general destruction. So far, they haven't fully succeeded in weakening the Syrian army as they did in Iraq, where the army was disbanded, nor have they fully succeeded in spreading sectarianism, as Syria still doesn't allow religious-based political parties.
You ever see the video where General Wesley Clark starts talking about invading, like what's going to be done, the timeline that's been laid out for the United States to invade all these other countries and take over? Have you ever seen that?
I heard something about that.
You never seen the video?
No. What is it?
You should watch it because it's pretty fascinating.
What's it called?
General Wesley Clark,
Okay.
who's a guy who ran for president. I think he ran for president in 2004.
Yeah.
When did he run for president? 2008, maybe? Maybe 2008.
Yeah.
Whenever it was that he ran for president. He was a just a decorated general.
Mm-hmm.
And like a patriot, a war hero, a guy who was like really well respected. And I believe it was on Charlie Rose, and he laid out the government's plan. Like the people that are you would be fascinated by this. So I'll play it for you.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
In 1973, I was on a St. Louis radio station during the Arab oil embargo, and a non-Jewish caller called up and he said the following. He said, you know, I don't understand. You Jews seem to be the tail that wags the dog. You want America to take great concern over the Jews of Russia and exacerbate tensions with the other superpower. You want us to help Israel and have hostile, therefore more hostile relations with those who have our oil. What gives with you Jews? Are you the tail that wags the dog? It took the World Trade Center bombing to take Hamas seriously in America. It's too bad. Maybe had we taken it seriously sooner, a few families would have had their fathers and brothers and sons in New York. My friends, the enemies of Israel are not the Boy Scouts of the world. The enemies of Israel is Iran, which is destroying its Baha'is, Sudan, which actually crucifies blacks. New York Times article a couple of months ago, but didn't get to see that on CNN. Iraq, which is a living concentration camp for its own people. Syria, which destroyed 20,000 of its own citizens in just one fairly well-known operation a few years ago. Hamas, whose agenda is the destruction of anyone who opposes their theocracy. Those are the enemies of Israel. They are also the enemies of good people. It is not a position we Jews asked for, but when we make this known to non-Jews, they will understand why we are here.
Bin Laden didn't blow up the projects. It was you, nigga. Tell the truth, nigga.
לא העיקרי, קודם כל לתת להם מכות, לא רק מכות כל כך מכינות, שהמחיר יהיה כבד למצוא. כרגע המחיר לא כבד למצוא. התקפה רבת היקף ברשות הפלסטינית. זה לפחד שהכל מתמודד.
ואז, רגע, אבל אז השוק העולם יגיד מה אתם חושבים. אתה לא מפחד מהעולם, ביבי.
במיוחד היום עם אמריקה, אני יודע מה זה אמריקה. אמריקה זה דבר שאפשר להזיז אותו בקלות, להזיז לכיוון הנכון.
הם אומרים שהם בעדינו, אבל כאילו...
לא יחמירו.
אז שאם אנחנו עושים את זה משהו, אז הם...
יש כאלה, אז נניח שהם אומרים משהו. אז אמרו, 80% מהאמריקאים תומכים בה. זה אבסורד, יש לנו שם תמיכה כזאת, ואנחנו אומרים מה נעשה עם ה... הממשל הוא היה פרו-פלסטיני בצורה קיצונית. לא פחדתי להתעמת שם. לא פחדתי להתעמת עם קלינטון. לא פחדתי להתעמת עם החוק. בלאו הכי את המחיר הבינלאומי אני משלם. אז עדיף לקבל תמורה. תמורה לאגרה.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. And there is no question that once he acquires it, history shifts immediately. And today the United States must destroy the same regime because a nuclear-armed Saddam will place the security of our entire world at risk. 2 decades ago, it was possible to thwart Saddam's nuclear ambitions by bombing a single installation. But today, nothing less than dismantling his regime will do. Because Saddam's nuclear program has fundamentally changed in those 2 decades. He no longer needs one large reactor to produce the deadly material necessary for atomic bombs. He can produce it in centrifuges the size of washing machines that can be hidden throughout the country. And I want to remind you that Iraq is a very big country. It is not the size of Monte Carlo. It is a big country. And I believe that even free and unfettered inspections will not uncover these portable manufacturing sites of mass death. The information we had was that Saddam was pursuing all avenues of developing weapons of mass destruction. And the means to deliver them. I have to say that he was enjoying in this effort the support of Russian technology, and I should say Russian technologists on site. They were a principal source, and other regimes, including North Korea, were supporting that effort as well. There is no question that he had not given up on his nuclear program, not whatsoever. There is also no question that he was not satisfied with the arsenal of chemical and biological weapons that he had, and was trying to perfect them constantly. If perfect is the word to describe this ghoulish enterprise. I think frankly, it is not serious to assume that this man who 20 years ago was very close to producing an atomic bomb spent the last 20 years sitting on his hands. He has not. And every indication we have is that he is pursuing with abandon, pursuing with every ounce of effort the establishment of weapons of mass destruction, including nuclear weapons. Saddam is hell-bent on achieving atomic bombs, atomic capabilities as soon as he can. But I also say that if you connect the dots, you know, here's a man who, from the minute he achieved powers, is trying to create a nuclear weapon. 20 years ago, he's very close to producing it. He's foiled. He changes the technology to centrifuges that will prevent him being foiled again. We know that he's taking in nuclear technologists and nuclear technology from various countries. We know that he's developing the means to deliver these weapons. We have defectors who describe how committed he is to this above all else. So we have all these dots, and we say, well, we don't know exactly what is happening. You know, it's like you're about to see somebody plunge the knife into someone. You're looking through a keyhole. You follow the murderer. You know that he's suspected of, he's already killed a few people, and you see him trailing somebody, and you're trailing him. You go, he shuts the door, you're looking through the keyhole, and you see him grasping the throat of this person, raising the knife, and then the light goes out, and the next thing you know is a body is found. And you can say, well, you know, I didn't actually see him on flagrante, in the act, if you will. But I think, Mr. Kucinich, that it is simply not reflecting the reality to assume that Saddam isn't feverishly working to develop nuclear weapons as we speak. It's a cat and mouse game, and he's the cat, and he's successful cat. It is not very difficult to deceive inspectors. It's not even very difficult to deceive satellite inspection. You can burrow tunnels and hide the earth. Did you ever see The Great Escape, the movie The Great Escape? Remember that movie? You know, where all these guys come out and they have the sand which they distribute through the trousers while they're walking the yards. That's essentially what dictators do. They can create tunnels and labyrinths that you'd never discover, that are impervious to radar and other means. They can, when you have an entire country to hide portable centrifuges that are a little bigger than those two chimeras, it's not very difficult. You can get away with it, and he has gotten away with it, frankly. The application of power is the most important thing in winning the war on terrorism. If I had to say, what are the three principles of winning the war on terror? It's like, what are the three principles of real estate, the three L's, location, location, location? The three principles of winning the war on terror are the three W's, winning, winning, and winning. The more victories you amass, the easier the next victory becomes. The first victory in Afghanistan makes a second victory